Corporate Mom, I 4.0 Operation Courage. Corporate universities revitalizing advanced global economy.
Copyright CorporateMOM, Corporate Management Orbit Mission.
Corporate Mom, I 4.0 Operation Courage. Corporate universities revitalizing advanced global economy. That's my topic today. I hope it is interesting. We're on the cusp of the fourth industrial revolution, I 4.0, consisting of 1. Advanced digital technology, and 2. Recording societal changes with the emergent property of advanced global economy. Recording societal changes is what is crucial to know what changes we could perceive in an otherwise static day-to-day routine of life and, of course, death. Whether our perception is true or false is not a subjective matter. It is dependent on the quality of the object perceived. Let us have a look at the generational transformation from one era to another. The Pew Research Center periodically updates the age ranges it uses to define the generational groups, and that includes the silent generation. The silent generation born between 1928 and 1948, that's about 78 to 95 years old, that is number 1. Baby boomers are born between 1946 and 1964, 59 to 77 years old, number 2. Gen X born between 1965 and 1980, 43 to 58 years old. That is number 3. Millennials born between 1981 and 1996, 27 to 42 years old. Gen Z born 1997 to 2012, 11 to 26 years old. Gen Alpha, now newly brought in, is born early 2010s to 2025, roughly about 10 years old. It's quite funny indeed. I am part of the silent generation. So was Socrates and Galileo. They tried to change the then prevailing ecosystem. Time for silent generation to be not so silent. Time for the Gen Z to take notes, because the cusp is dependent on this group. Mark my word. Since the days of Ashoka in 300 BC, there is not a single century that could be termed as a civilizational era anywhere in the world. It is so because social values have not been addressed at all. Corporate citizenship, therefore, is at the cusp of the modern-cum-corporate civilization, where a GDP JNH Connect can get an entry, not just economic but a happiness index as well. This is where Gen Z is at the point of inflection. The silent generation went through the I 2.0, the second industrial revolution. No remorse for Hiroshima or Nagasaki or Nazi death camps. Ashoka was saddened by the aftermath of violence in the war that author and historian A.G. Wells said, amidst the tens of thousands of names of monarchs that crowd the columns of history, the name of Ashoka shines, and shines almost alone, a star. That is our tradition, creating a general silent generation, life after life. After Ashoka, Gen X and Millennials are already in line to be promoted. Baby boomers are the happiest lot. as they would get promoted to the silent generation category before long. They're almost there. The big question is what we have to do with these Gen Z guys, girls and boys. In fact, Gen Z is the category we are talking of, girls for once. Otherwise, it is boys only club all the way. That is what Corporate Mom has brought us all to look into. Take first the universities. The universities' business schools we shall focus on are manned by baby boomers. I shall describe a personal note. Professor Leif Edvinson, like my post, Corporate Mom decodes Indian statistical ecosystem, establishing a dynamic GDP GNH database systems. My work on intellectual value capital is unique. Continuing his comments, he also made a comment, a very interesting Volkswagen chart. Miss the deepening on IA and IPR. I replied to Professor Leif Edvinson, thus, IA, intangible asset if you mean, has no role to play in my framework. IPR, policies, and strategic plans are all under management quality. Thanks to Professor Leif Edvinson, who is a professor emeritus at the University of Lund in Sweden, I had a good number of professors from Greater Stockholm metropolitan area and Lund University evincing interest in my article, surely because of Professor Edvinson. He went on to add, we might form an exploration team with Marcus Will and many more. But I am on a mission possible drive for Operation Courage, corporate universities revitalizing advanced global economy. Getting out from the comments column, I wrote a separate post. Professor Edvinson, I thank you for referring to Intangible Asset Gap in Global Competitiveness, a book authored by Eskil Olberg, Professor Edvinson, and Carol A.U. Lin. I am the advocate of scrapping IAS 38, intangible assets, and reinstate IAS 9, accounting for research and development activities. Where IPRs are fully protected, IAS 38 intangible asset is a singular instrument that has destroyed the world economy, ably supported by the audit firms who could not see the wheat from the chaff. The calls for more individuals from different fields. This has seen the end of further comments from Professor Edvinson, public and private. But I do hope he continues the discussion based on my work on intellectual value capital, which conforms to the science of laws of physics, quantum physics, and metaphysics. Next, on point 1 in universities. What category universities would fit in? Silent generation? Let me quote Alan Savory, and I have his permission to quote his very brilliant narration. Hear him straight.
What is science? People talk glibly about science. What is science? People coming out of a university with a master's degree or a PhD, you take them into the field and they literally don't believe anything unless there's a peer-reviewed paper. It's the only thing they accept. And you say to them, but let's observe, let's think, let's discuss. They don't do it. It's just, is it in a peer-reviewed paper or not? That's their view of science. I think it's pathetic. Gone into universities as bright young people. They come out of them brain dead, not even knowing what science means. They think it means peer-reviewed papers, etc. No, that's academia. And if a paper is peer-reviewed, it means everybody thought the same, therefore they approved it. An unintended consequence is that when new knowledge emerges, new scientific insights, they can never, ever be peer-reviewed. So we're blocking all new advances in science that are big advances. If you look at the breakthroughs in science, almost always they don't come from the center of that profession. They come from the fringe. The finest candle makers in the world couldn't even think of electric lights. They don't come from within. They often come from outside the breaks. We're going to kill ourselves because of stupidity.
What Alan Savory says is about Gen Z, not about the professors. Universities have to look into the change that is needed to save Gen Z from the same morass of previous generations have undergone. That's my opinion. In my book, Corporate Mom, Sustainability of Corporate Stability, elaborates with a case study on Volkswagen. If universities cannot debate this case study, who else would? Gen Z is deprived of knowledge of corporate misbehavior. Do the universities teach students on subject matter, or do they prepare them for placement in companies? Possibly they can outsource the function to HR agencies, maybe from their own alumni. This dangerous trend is set in all the universities. Free thinking is lost for universities. 1.3, the same university is part of it. Societal changes. In a post from Medicon Village, we congratulate Denmark for securing the top position as a leading innovator in Europe, with Sweden closely following at number 2 in the 2023 edition of the European Innovation Scoreboard and the bi-yearly edition of the Regional Innovation Scoreboard. I raise the question, what makes Denmark better? For which Professor Leif Edvindsen gave me a crisp reply. Societal entrepreneurship. For on this topic, I replied, while writing Corporate Mom decodes M&A ecosystem. I'm giving the reference, possibly the QR code. I found some interesting factors with regard to Denmark. The intellectual value capital of some selected companies on M&A. Denmark has the largest amount of pension funds assets relative to GDP when considering the whole funded private pension system, more than twice the size of GDP. It was in 2019 report that came around 2020. After a strong performance 2021, assets earmarked for retirement fell in 2022 in most OECD countries. Altogether, these plans held US dollar 48.1 trillion of assets at the end 2022, 15.6% less than a year before. The decline in pension assets was widespread and visible in 32 of 38 OECD countries. As a result of these declines, there was no OECD country where pension assets exceeded twice the GDP at the end of 2022, unlike at the end 2021 when Denmark 233%, Iceland 219%, and the Netherlands 213% did. OECD preliminary data in June 2023. Denmark should look into this. That's what I had indicated in my post. In my opinion, to me, Denmark seems vulnerable to the stock market valuation of scripts. Denmark invests. Possibly there is no other goal. However, the crux of my article on the M&A ecosystem is to quote, pension funds were mostly invested in equities and bonds at the end of 2019. Pension funds held more than 78% of their portfolios in equities and bonds in 16 out of 36 reporting countries. OECD countries and in 17 out of 28 other reporting jurisdictions. that is a high dependency on corporate profits. Denmark, as well as any other countries, to keenly watch the profits generated by companies and the dividend yield that would decide the fate of the management of pension funds. Growth is important, wherein lies the sustainability of corporate stability. One cannot afford on Silicon Valley Bank or Credit Suisse one too often. Got to be very careful about it. The whole country gets really get into a problem. Then we have to carefully look at the European Innovation Scoreboard vis-a-vis the returns. That is where IA, the intangible asset, comes into the picture. For example, the Millennium merger of the AOL takeover of Time Warner is a case in point, creating a 335 billion company, proving that in a world ruled by finance, intangible assets rather than real assets are the indicator of real wealth. The initial pumping of oxygen, making unicorns in the name of innovation, resulted in OECD 46.1 trillion pension funds at a lower rate of 15.6% than the previous year. It is a huge setback. Real assets are what is crucial for balance sheet purposes, not intangible assets. Companies inflate the valuation, as in the case of AOL, and have to come back or writing off year by year. If the expected revenue does not match, we are left with an SVB. In my opinion, number two, what is the solution? For the same post, I found Copenhagen Business School has also dropped in. Going through their website, I found it interesting to note the emphasis on societal changes. It states, CBS is a globally recognized business school with deep roots in the Nordic socio-economic model. Our faculty has a broad focus on social challenges, and we have earned a reputation for high quality disciplinary and interdisciplinary research and education. CBS is looking into the societal changes, and hopefully Gen Z is focused on. I have elaborated on the same in my book CorporateMOM, Sustainability of Corporate Stability. Please go through it for societal challenges that are in plenty as to how to meet these challenges. I find universities, business schools have a lot more teachings that would make corporate useful citizens for an advanced global economy. I must confess at this point, universities are more of a silent generation than with a vibrant Gen Z attitude. I come to the UK. No, it is Gen Z, American. The late cosmologist Carl Sagan says, we make our world significant by the courage of our questions and the depth of our answers. Rest with Gen Z, for you are left alone to care for yourself. Take note. I 4.0 is for advanced global economy and is not for the asking, as universities have to emphasize recording societal changes. CorporateMOM deals with it effectively by bringing in SDG goal number 5, gender equality, as a pivotal instrument that shall exemplify societal entrepreneurship. I'm interested in Copenhagen Business School model to exchange ideas. No wonder Denmark is in the forefront, as our learned Professor Henrik, who Olesen hails from that place. I like him. His excellent speech. Societal challenges must be posed to Gen Z irrespective of which area, which field they specialize in, art, science or literature. I don't appreciate social entrepreneurship as something innovative business venture, separate from other existing businesses. Check CorporateMOM, how women empowerment is brought into the Volkswagen case study. Let me move on to number 2, corporate mission possible. Corporate is a case of missing the forest for a tree. Recently, big companies have laid off hundreds of employees. I keep wondering, when we look at an organization's FEC, fiscal ethical co-responsibility framework, we see a company's operating system, only 6% of operations are measured, leaving behind 94% unattended. FEC report is enabled by SYS subject-object self-governance standards CorporateMOM provides you with. I have clearly mentioned in the FEC framework, deploy women empowerment and men man the 94% qualitative elements of management. Secondly, realign your ERP projecting to 2030 all the elements of management, quantitative and qualitative elements of management, on a CAGR to CDGR and a CARR to CDRR system of tracking the operating system. 94% of the operating system needs as many men and women as demanded to complete the FEC report. When 94% of jobs are to be carried out and without attending to it as a priority, you are sacking the employees. Corporate handle only object governance. Corporate is of crazy guys picked from Gen X upwards looking for retirements. How can it happen? So much of work to be done for each and every company. Focusing on Gen Z, corporate shall discuss with the universities how they can teach the students to graduate in societal changes. The graduates can fit in easily to companies. In reality, Gen Z is the reverse mentor for companies stuck with the ecosystem. Illustratively, take a look at the initiative Climate Bonds Certification. Climate Bonds Standard globally recognized Paris aligned certification of debt instruments, entities, and assets using robust science-based methodologies updated recently. It states entities that have ambitious climate mitigation performance targets that are aligned with the climate bond sector criteria at the time of certification or that will align by 2030 and that meet the requirements of transition plan and disclosure as defined in this standard. And take a look at sector criteria that are currently eligible for certification. I'm giving you the image part of it. I also had a look at the speech delivered by Marshall Memo, Circular Mining and Mine Remediation with Biochar, who states, today's waste will become the raw materials that abate climate change and damage and are financed through European Union climate bonds. Since March 2020, there have been over 2+ trillion euros in climate bonds issued in this endeavor. Now, of course, other elements have interfered, like the war in Ukraine and other political events, but it is still in process. When you look at the climate bond certification standard launched in 2012, the standard was initially designed as a mechanism to support confidence in the climate change action credentials of green bonds and other debt instruments and to provide a tool to allow quick investment decision making. Climate bonds have certified over $270 billion of user proceeds green bonds since the launch of the certification scheme. So $217 billion has been certified and 2+ trillion euros climate bonds are issued and waiting to be certified. Climate mitigation performance targets that are aligned with the climate bonds sector criteria at the time of certification or that will align by 2030 is a long shot in the transition to a green economy. Important points to be noted are: 1. Climate bond certification is object-oriented. Certification of the environmental credentials of specific projects, assets, or activities following the climate bond sector-specific criteria. Sector criteria that are currently eligible for certification is again a long list. Number 2. Subject governance is what men and women within an organization conduct themselves relative to the tasks assigned. In case of Volkswagen case study from my book, it elaborates on 5 priorities as set by Matthias Müller, the one guy who was before Dr. Diaz, who took over after the fiasco. He said priority number 1, customer satisfaction, that's what it should be. Priority number 2, uncover the truth and learn from it. Number 3, change in organization structure. Number 4, establishing corporate culture. Number 5, strategy 2025. This I have elaborated why it is essential for every company to arrive at the framework, FEC framework. Considering the long period of transition to a green economy, 2030 for corporate, 2040 for critical metals, some countries 2050, 2060, 2070, what is needed is to establish SOS governance in each and every company. An FEC report must be mandatory, made mandatory. Again and again, I reiterate the Volkswagen case study is a must for business schools for Gen Z to learn. For between the cup and the lip, how 11 million vehicles escaped diesel emission standards by implementing a cheat software. Be very, very careful about it. We are taking things for granted as though something has happened, nothing, and we move on. The silent generation. We can't create a silent generation again and again. So Gen Z has to take note. Let me also quote from my book. Kuroda and Halton in 2010 estimate that in 2007, by omitting investments in intangibles, $4.1 trillion was excluded from the published national accounts data in the US. Please note it. Number 1, intangible asset IAS 38 must be scrapped. And 2, establish FEC report as a mandatory instrument by each company proactively. The quality of a substance cannot be separated from the substance, not the work associated with it. Intangible asset is not a substance of quality. FEC report is the measure of work associated with the substance of quality. Two different things. If universities and corporate come together to teach Gen Z, who can be a reverse mentor for Gen X to silent generation, 1, 2, 3, 4 categories, I suppose, to boomers and silent generation. Then only then we can think of RGE, revitalizing global economy, aligning to the ecosystem. Management is simple and mission operation courage is possible.